I'm really happy to be here. I always love the ISPI meetings. I miss you all. I wish I could see everybody in person, but I think this is a great pivot for our current circumstances, a great example. But we do have people here who I know who are not from the local area, so we are getting some of the advantages of a virtual delivery by having people come from different parts of the country. So thank you especially to all of you for coming, and I really appreciate being here. This is always a great event. Are we going to give people a few more minutes, or are we going to jump right in?
Let's jump in. For those of you that got here on time, let's reword that. Now, as I recall from our earlier discussions, you had a few topics that you want to talk about, and one of them was how organizations are developing and reskilling their staffs. Let's talk about that for a few minutes.
Well, I just want to introduce myself just a little bit. I've had over 30 years, I did some math, of experience in this field, but most of it has been in the high-tech industry. So I kind of wanted to set the expectation or set the level set that what I'm kind of talking about is from a high-tech perspective, right? So, and it's different. And considering our audiences, not everybody here is going to be working with high-tech workers with high-tech skills, maybe accustomed to being and doing remote work and that kind of thing. So, so that's kind of the perspective I'm coming from. I will say I have just left Teradata, like, still doing paperwork, but that's a lot of the experience I'm going to bring to this. So in terms of developing and reskilling our workforce, one of the things that has been very, very much on my mind lately is that the workforce has changed. I mean, their circumstances have changed quite a lot due to this crisis. People are, one level of it is anxiety, right? There's a high level of anxiety. People are working in a different circumstance. They are maybe working from home, and the kids are home and they have school and they have all these other things going on. So that's part of the landscape that we're facing right now with learning, the challenges that the workforce is facing. But there's fear, there's anxiety, the economic fears. Going to the store is both an additional chore and a risk. We have real threat out there, and that's something that I've just been really thinking a lot about and working with my colleagues at Teradata. It is us as learning developers that are facing that. It is our SMEs that we collaborate that are facing that. It is our leaders that are facing that. So we are working in learning and development in this landscape now, which has this great anxiety and stress. So I think this is something we really need to keep in mind as we're developing, and it's going to affect, I think, maybe a little bit the product of what we develop and the process. People's sense of time may be off. They may take more time and need more time to get things done. Plus, maybe some people are working extra because they're bored. I don't know. So the whole landscape that we're working in, is changed, so that affects learning, right? Also, I think the other thing that's going to be happening in terms of developing our workforce is whatever kind of organization you are in, whatever business you are in, that is changing. In a tech company like Teradata, a lot of different kinds of industries use our product. So we have, in Teradata, what you do is you help very specifically what those customers need, right? What the oil and gas customer need, what's that pharmaceutical customer need, what does that airline customer need, what does that banking customer need, just industries across the board. Every one of those businesses is changing right now. So I think what's going to be happening is that our leaders, stressed out and trying to be calm, are figuring out how do they have to pivot, how do they have to shift, what are their new points of emphasis for the business. And maybe we've had some plans and learning development that, just thrown up in the air right now because they're going to need to pivot. So, but the upside of that is the opportunity, right? To work with leadership, to collaborate, to show them how we can help our workforce. So I've really been concerned about the stress and anxiety. I think we need to acknowledge it. I think we need to address it maybe explicitly in some ways that we've never done before. But also we want to be aligning with our business and our leadership and being really attuned to that and saying, hey, how can we help you? How can we direct our workforce into the right skills, into the right areas that they need to be focusing on to serve our new mission, right? To understand what is our new mission, what is our new strategy, what are the areas that are need to be emphasized now, and really go down that road. So it's a great opportunity to align with the business, but there's also things we need to do to help people in this new work environment. Of course, the logistics component of this, how many people are now on your home Wi-Fi if you're working from home, right? Do you have kids needing help with the school? So time and the way we use time for development and learning, that's changing a lot too. We have to help folks manage their learning in a work context, but around all of those other challenges they're facing, right? Maybe the Wi-Fi's clogged, maybe a kid is right there needing help with school. So I think these are some challenges we have now, but if we can address these now, we're going to be better overall, I think.
I think you're right. And you're reminding me of a friend's situation where he was due to do be a moderator on a webinar meeting, and he called and said, sorry, the wife had a baby this morning and I'm not going to be there. So, his boss jumped in and took over, and they started the meeting with a photo of the baby, which I thought was really sweet. But, I'm sure you've been reading and seeing things online and elsewhere talking about this three-ring circus that most of us are working in, with kids and family. And I certainly share your thoughts about going to the grocery store. That's something that you never really thought about. I could get COVID-19 and die from this. And it's certainly disconcerting. But I think that, in looking at some of the things I'm seeing online, I think that people in our field are kind of rising to it. Do you think that this may give us an opportunity to move some of our clients to more distance learning or computer-based learning or web-based learning, simply because that's literally all we have available right now? And then, if that goes well, we may be able to do more of that in the future. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. In the tech industry, because we have always a lot of volume of new things happening and a lot of change constantly, because everybody's inventing some new technical thing, we've had to rely on a lot of remote learning techniques, and the people are comfortable with technology, right? So that is something that we've been able to do. But we have to do more of it, because sometimes we do, like for customer training, that's often, especially in depth, it's done face-to-face. Well, all of that now is moving to remote, right? And there's going to be just great opportunity to make that happen, and we can get more done. One of the things, as I mentioned, with people joining here, and I know there's people here from across the country. So, we were able to expand our audience, and we could do it immediately. We have to kind of spell out what some of the advantages are, because we love face-to-face. We're human beings. We love that.
Well, I think as human beings, we're all kind of geared to that too.
Yeah. But there are advantages to the remote aspect. And one of the biggest ones, and in product training, I'll give you an example. New product comes out, and I want everybody in the world in my audience that has to deal with this to know this right now. And with virtual, I can do that. Once I get this done, once I get my product done, it can be released immediately if it's asynchronous, right? Very easy. I don't have to go through a whole rollout process where a lot of instructor time and months down the road. They can find out now. And that is a huge advantage of moving to remote. I think we're always going to have a mix. I think it's going to be not an either or situation. It'll be a both and. I think we can't wait to see each other again in person. I can't wait to see all of you. But I have one picture that's a little bit of fun that I'm just gonna to show you guys. And this was a perspective that I really enjoyed. This is about 8 years ago. I hope you guys can see that.
Yep.
And there was a TED Talk by a professor, I think it was at Stanford. And he said, you know, I'm teaching artificial intelligence. This is the most modern thing I can possibly be doing. But I am using medieval methods of education, right, for maybe early Renaissance, if it's in Italy, 14th century. And he says, you got the stage on the stage, you got the medium, you know, they have books. And this is before printing press. So those would have been pretty precious items in there. But what do you have there? You can see there's a guy sleeping, there's people talking, and even what we think in the classroom, right, which is the best, you know, most engaging thing. Yeah, people are checking out, right? So, and again, like I say, you know, we're all going to need headgear if we can't get our hair done soon. You know? So, but that's why I love this picture because, and this little video is a great video because he talked about how he took his class at Stanford from a couple hundred students to 100,000. And if you need something that's a mind shift change, what that takes to do it, and it's a 6-minute video, it shows what can be done and it shows the advantages you can garner from virtual. So if we just say, hey, we don't need to be either or, we can be best fit. And that's what you always want to do is best fit. Is there a time factor here? Or is there really that networking? Because people in the live sessions, they get a lot of peer-to-peer networking, problem solving at lunch, at night, you know, in some of these big events, yep. Just huge. So it's not going to be either or, but I think the remote, let's find the advantages and take that opportunity. And now that we have to do it, let's get good at it.
I really like that idea that by using asynchronous, like real-time communication, we can shorten the development time or the preparation time for a new model rollout or something like that.
Yeah.
And you know, I hadn't thought of that, but certainly there's a lot of power in that, particularly when you're in a very competitive marketplace. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you were there. But it's I think just one of those things that we can bring to the table to our clients or our if we work in-house, to our bosses and you know, we've been doing this sort of stuff longer than they probably have. Certainly, yeah. Conferencing is not anything new, but it hasn't necessarily been used a lot. Let's talk a little bit about this lifelong learning mindset. I'm personally 100% in tune with that, but let's talk about it a little bit as to its benefits in this time.
Miller, this is Vince. Let me interrupt with a question someone wrote. And just, Kathleen, where'd you get that slide?
Oh, well, I have it in my resources that I'll stick in at the end. There's a video that is, it's a TED Talk called 100,000 Student Classroom, and it's within the video. And he had the citation there. It's from a book. But I just absolutely love that one because it makes the point of we're doing all this modern stuff. Why are we using only medieval technology, right? So, but it's right in that. It's right from that TED Talk, and it really inspired me. I said it just crystallized a lot for me. Plus the hats.
Good.
Okay.
Back to a lifelong learning mindset.
Okay.
I had that, but I'm wondering, I don't think necessarily our clients do, and I think we need to sell that a little bit.
Yeah, you know, I think in this way, lifelong learning mindset, our processes and our methods, I think, in instructional design and development and performance support are really sound, right? And we're responding right now to a change. But I think right now, the advantage that we bring is a move to an emphasis on the positive. What we bring is not just a response to a challenge, but this idea of growth, of creation in this time, incubating new things, because we have to be incubating on all dimensions of your organization or business. So I think that that mindset is there. I think we can inspire our audiences, helping them. I think one of the best things we could do is help them learn better how to learn at this time, because they're not relying on the traditional methods that they're used to. We see school children facing that right now, right? They're like, whoa, that rug was just pulled out from under me. So I think even maybe an opportunity, what works in learning? What makes you an effective learner? I can't learn it for you. I can't, Sue Gabriel had said this, you can't install learning, right? And helping them understand their role in this, being very explicit about it and not relying just on the designer's effort, but the learner's effort. I think that part of it, having people own their own education or their own responsibility for it, I think that this is a great time to maybe think about that. And again, emphasizing the positive, and that's for our learners, but also helping our leadership understand this is what we can bring to you now, right? Yes. And I think they like the idea of lifelong learning and a culture of learning, but they don't know how to do it, and we can bring that. Right. So, and right now, because the pace of change, because, we had lockdown and that was one change, and eventually we're going to have this opening up, whatever that means, that's going to be a different kind of change. And then there's going to be more of that down the road. So that agility and things like that, we're going to have to embrace and embody, but we can bring that to our leadership and say, hey, we're going to help your workforce with that. Right. So I think getting more explicit and purposeful and intentional about all of that.
I think this also is going to really draw out the differences between well-designed distance education and page turning, I'm falling asleep on the third page type of material that we've all looked at or critiqued or fallen asleep in front of. And I think it's going to, I think our clients and our management are going to notice the difference. And I think they're going to notice it because the audience are going to say, hey, that really works for me.
Yes, and I think we can measure that. I think it's important maybe at this time to start measuring that kind of thing, maybe using a net promoter score. It's somebody, would you recommend this to somebody like you, right? Would be a great way to measure it. But yeah, I mean, and one of the things that I've observed is I believe that if you design for virtual, say live virtual, and then take it to the classroom, that will work fairly well. But if you've got something designed for classroom and you just try to put it on the screen, just, let's just take this, 3-day, 8-hour-a-day class and put it on screen on Zoom, that doesn't work as well. Because when you're, as we all know, when you're building in the engagement, in the live face-to-face, the instructor's part of the show, they're doing all of the things we do as human beings very naturally. You have to explicitly build all of those things in, and it's going to depend on your context and what you do. But things like setting expectations in advance. If this is a big transition for your audience, letting them know in advance, a little bit of a marketing program. Hey, this is how this is going to be. This is how this is going to work. This is how we support you. This is what our expectations are of you. I think that will be part of the program as well, not just like, here it is online. Right? Yeah. So Vince, are you're waiting. Okay.
Is now a good time to throw you a couple
Sure.
questions? Okay, Lori Edelman mentions, Kathy, do you foresee any changes in learning departments? Different types of staff needed, different expectations by the organization's leadership?
Oh yeah. I mean, and I think one of the things that we're going to have to grapple with if you don't have good infrastructure for doing the online learning is you have to do that. You need a Zoom or a WebEx or something along those lines. One of the things that we're doing here that not everybody has embraced, but it's a really great tool or role, I should say role, it's not a tool, but Renee and Vince here are being sort of virtual learning producers for us, virtual classroom producers for us. And that way I don't have to pay attention to the chat box. Vince can do that. And Renee is just handling all the logistics of helping people come in and out and be mute or not mute. And so that role of the virtual classroom producer is incredibly useful. And I taught without it, so I really value when we have that person there. And that one in particular, I think, is one that really stands out for me. But you're also going to see, well, what happens to the developer role? Developer roles become incredibly important, and where you might have a different balance of instructors and developers, because if you're going to move to a virtual delivery, some of that might be asynchronous, right? So that the lecture portion is done asynchronous. It allows the people to refresh. It allows them to maybe time shift if they need to.
Yeah.
And it cuts down maybe the number of instructors you need to do a big deployment for the live component, right? So there might be a rebalancing there. And some people do both, right? That's fine. But this learning producer role or virtual classroom producer role, I think, is going to be a big one. Ability to create video, quality videos, that might be new for some people. Having those guidelines. I know there's a lot of experts on this call here. And then the other thing is, for those as in the technology environment, is we have to train on technology. But how do we do a lab environment virtually too, right? And give people that support. So that was a big one. I'm really proud of my team. We developed a method to put Teradata into on-demand lab environments, because it's a very rich, robust system that gets integrated with open source tools, and it's kind of a game changer, right? So that was a whole new role. That was a whole new capability to be able to do that. And there's vendors who can do it for different kinds of products, but virtual lab environments, how do you do that? So, right. And maybe people who could do simulations, right? So
I'm looking at a question from Laura here, who is asking, could you say a bit more about measuring online engagement, net promoter type score, that sort of thing?
Well, the net promoter score is something that you would just ask somebody, the simple question is, would you recommend this to somebody like you? And that, it says a lot about the training itself, whether or not it met its objectives. People don't know that, right? But they know, hey, yes, if somebody like me, my role, the kinds of work challenges I face, if I would recommend this to somebody else, it shows a certain level of quality. Now, I forget what the scale is, but the scale of a net promoter score, I think it goes from -100 to 100 or something. 50 is like off the charts good. So you really have to understand how to interpret that. But that's a good, simple question of how to do that. Now, in terms of engagement, there's new ways we have to get people in. I like to call it active learning, right? It's not just a lecture, right? But how is the person participating in the learning? And there are ways to do that. You can also do small, if you design this in a certain way, and I've done this, taking some big roadshow things and turning them into a repeatable blended learning that extends over a little bit of time. What you can do is have people do projects as teams remotely, and in the tech environment, that's a common thing. That's how they work. So it's not weird to do that. Now, I guess that's how a lot of people work. But they could they could do a little project as a small team and then come back to the classroom, and that's where you do a debrief and get feedback, because feedback is so important to helping people know, did I really get this skill, and then I learned how somebody else approached the problem, in those kinds of sessions. Sure. So I don't know. I hope I answered that.
No, I think you did. Vincent, looks like we have some questions here.
Yes, we do.
You're muted.
Vince.
Sorry about that. Being too good at it, right? Jonathan Troper mentioned, beyond good instructional design, what work have you done, Kathleen, to assist learners to transition to comfort with classroom to live virtual online learning? And he did a follow-up question about, what do you mean by lab environment?
Okay, so if you're in a high-tech company like I've been working with, people have to go into a system and do things like queries and write queries or practice new query functionality or accessing a data lake. It's all this techie stuff. But it could be a simulation, depending on the nature of your business, right? So for us, a lab environment doing hands-on practice is a big deal, right? We have to train our consulting people how to do that. So we've got one that's cloud-based, and it allows people to do quite a range of things in a lab environment. So that one was the easy one. Getting people into online learning and getting them able to do that. So when I did this one class and I was saying, okay, they were going to do a big mindset change, and we structured it almost like a MOOC, like a college course online. But people weren't used to that yet. So I actually created a video and I said, this is how this is going to work. And you're going to do some things on your own. There's some modules you're going to do on yourself. You manage your schedule. Then you'll have a little bit of teamwork exercise, and you're going to meet with your team. And we would help during the first live session, help them organize that. And then we're going to meet together, and you give them the whole schedule, and this is how it's going to go. And so, and these are, you know, techie people, so we didn't have to do too much education on that. But you just laying it all out. This is how this is going to work. So I just made a little video describing it, right? And then they would have it. It was like 3 or 4 minutes, and that helped them. Now, I have to give a shout out here to my friend and colleague, Patricia Hernandez, who does citizenship classes, and they were typically in person. And so suddenly she had to take this remote, and her students tend not to have laptops or Wi-Fi, but they have these. So she moved her sessions onto Zoom, and she used some online tools for like quizzes and some activities, and she was able to pivot onto that. But she had to teach them how to do that. And they got a side benefit. It was really gratifying. We were talking about it, and she said, these are people who never thought they would be online, quote unquote, and now they are, and they love it. But she had to spend the time educating them on how to do it. So if you're making this transition, and these are people who are not used to that, you're probably going to have to do a little upfront time in what tools are we using? How do you use them? How do you interact? With the tech people, it's a little easier, but if they're not, then you might have to spend some time doing that. But then, you know, try and use the same thing over time, right? Don't go switching around too many tools, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Let me jump in one other one. Nora Perrin sent us all a link in the chat button about your speaker earlier, and also had a question. Would you say a bit about measuring online engagement, Net Promoter type score?
That doesn't measure engagement per se. It does measure people, how much they believe it was useful to them. There are tools that you can use for online learning where you can have the video on and you can kind of see if people are engaged, or that will also say, hey, somebody's got another window open, and you know, you can say, hey, stop that. But you build in things like, hey, you know, you ask a lot of questions, or you just say, you can actually have, depending on the tool you use, people engage on the screen. We taught a class on that. Elizabeth Nachman and I were here, and we developed the class, and we would allow people to make marks and things on the screen depending on the tool that you use. So you bring people in that way. Using the chat box engages people. You can see if they're doing things that way. You know, so that's an instructor sensing engagement, but you can also in your evaluation ask, you know, did you feel engaged part of the class, and that sort of thing. Oh, I will tell you, okay, because I was working at a very technical company at Teradata, and they were experimenting. There's a technology innovation office with having cameras on people in the audience, especially for large events. And they were using AI to help, artificial intelligence, to help gauge people's attention by how they were focused on the presenter, the instructor, things like that. So that's another possibility if you've got those kind of people around to try that. So it's like if you're really engaging with the instructor paying attention, the AI system could pick that up and they could kind of come up with a score. So there's always that.
That's interesting. Kristen has asked the question, so if we think about evaluation, would it be level 1 feedback? And certainly in terms of the evaluations I've seen on most online training, I think that's true. I think that it would be more useful if we were to ask questions of the learner. Do you think you'd be able to do this, perform this task, having watched this or having completed this training. In other words, are they comfortable attempting to perform whatever it is we're trying to train them on? And if not, then we need to ask some feedback of, well, do you need some more practice or whatever?
And you can build in, again, it just really depends on the nature of the skill being developed and the industry and how people work. But there can also be, you can create situations where you're engaging the management, right? And that they are following up and that they're given guidelines. You can develop guidelines and things for the managers to look at and then provide coaching after the fact or remediation. Plus there's some tools and we kept trying to use this one in my group, one called Mind Marker, where you can send little things to the phone, right? And it's kind of a gamified system and they would answer questions, right? And if they got it wrong, it would take them into more content. So if you start building in follow-up, because we know the forgetting curve, right?
Yeah.
So you want to build something in that builds on it. But if you do some of these blended learning things and you space out the training a little bit, so it's not like a compressed 3 days, you're going to get a better learning effectiveness, right? Because they're reinforcing over time. We know that if you space your learning engagements instead of concentrating, which feels good in some kind of way, but if you space it out, you're going to get more uptake. You're going to build more neurons that work in that way, right?
Yeah.
So
and stuff that they can recall. And I think that one of the challenges that some of our colleagues have missed in computer-based training and distance education is that they make the mistake of providing too much information in a given session, and then not giving the learner a chance to synthesize that information, to think it through. And your comment just now about several meetings of shorter duration works better. And again, because we deal with it repetitively, and therefore we give them the practice of recalling that information that we hope that they remembered, and in so doing, we actually help them to remember it.
Yes. Especially if you're building, right?
Yeah. We're at about 34 minutes into our program, and we did say the time was going to fly by, and it certainly has. Let's talk for a minute about our last bullet point here, the changes to expect in instructional design thinking for a changing world. I think that we still need to consider the importance of engagement and interactivity. And I think that some people that get tasked with doing online training miss that point. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think learning and development, instructional design professionals should be able to build an engagement. There's lots of courses, tools. I think we've got some coming up to really help with that. Some of the challenges with that kind of engagement is like us, we would tend to need to depend on experts. And they love the idea, they're going to get out there and share their expertise. All they want to do is talk, and they need a lot of guidance. And we did this with some ecosystem architecture training, and we say, okay, no, you have to build in people doing the activity. You have to give them that time, and then even allotting time for feedback is like, because they say, oh, it's going to take this long to do. I'm like, no, you're going to give them time to work through it, and then you're going to give time to give them feedback, and just those kinds of things, especially when you're dealing with experts. They
have long ago forgotten the challenges of learning it as a novice.
Yes. And
sometimes we have to literally drag them back to, wait a minute, think about when you started something really challenging, and the look on their face is like, oh yeah, that was a real pain in the butt to learn that stuff. And then you can kind of present the point that, okay, we need to do this in smaller bite-sized chunks, and I think that works for it. But go ahead.
No, there's a lot of practices that you can bring to bear, right? And just saying you're only going to go this long before changing it up and giving somebody something to do. And you can build that in even as you're sharing information, right? But give them something to do. How are they engaging? And it always goes back. I mean, what do you want them to do? Have them do that, right? It's not about the information. One of these days, there's an article I want to write. It's been rolling around my head for a long time, which is look up versus learn. And look up is more about information. Learn is more about building the neurons, the muscle. And what the difference is. And so what we need to employ all of those things. And again, I think also helping our learners understand what helps them learn, because when we're talking in the moment, it's like, yeah, I get it. And then forgetting curve, boom, it goes right down afterwards. So what do you do to actually help you with the learning, not just the skill building, but in some cases the information, right? So that information is at hand when you need it. It's in your brain. You can easily move it into your working memory. But it's work to do this, and people can think, oh, I'm just going to spew information, and that happens in the tech world a lot. But that's the kind of thing we need to focus on. Yeah, so I don't know. I think I might have gone off your question there.
I'm looking at a comment from Kristen. A good online learning experience considers adult education, adult learning principles, which considers a novice learner. And certainly you and I understand that, but some of the people that we work for and our clients don't necessarily understand that. And I find it's a constant, constant process of training the people we report to. But that's just part of the gig that we got into. We're kind of at the end of our program today, and I need to
5 minutes to go.
Vincent, question.
We have 5 minutes. I just wanted to let everyone know we have 5 minutes to go. So if there are any comments you wanted to share or any questions or anything, that we're about 5 minutes from the end point. Just that's it. Go ahead, Kathleen. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no, I mean, the instructional designers get it, right? It's when you're working with somebody who has the expertise and they think their mindset is, it's just me talking, and we have to kind of work with them. In the tech world, you're always working with experts, right? And you have to collaborate with them. And I've actually created a design board for them. Here's how to spell these things out, so that tools to use as you're working with them. We get it. But we have to work with people who say, oh, I have to do that. Yeah, they tend to underestimate it. Yeah, so.
Yeah. I think that it comes back to the instructional designer's dilemma of making the material interesting and making it captivating, if you will, or creating that elegant training that doesn't put them to sleep, but actually makes them curious and want to do more.
Yeah. And in fact, I mean, if you could start out with how do we pique curiosity from the beginning, right? Yeah. It makes them hungry, and thus,
curiosity is one of our greatest assets, and it's just great. I need to cover a couple of points here related to our upcoming events. On Friday, we have a roundtable meeting. And you can find that on our website on the events page. And next Tuesday, at this time, we're going to talk to Chris. We're going to have another webinar, and you can find that on our web page as well. Renee, can we show them that closing page, which is a screen grab from our events page? Renee, by the way, is the lady that's the magician behind the curtain here in terms of these things. Here we go.
Let me interrupt. The Kirsten is the same Kirsten who's in the call with you. You saw her name here. Go ahead.
Yeah. So next week, Kirsten is going to be talking with us, and you can see some of the information here. This is a screen grab right off of our website, the events page. Our website is ISPISoCal.org, and you can find more of our upcoming presentations from there. Yeah, I'm popular with the contractors today. Okay, I think we're at the, no, we've got a couple of minutes left.
I had one slide I wanted to share. Just sure. I call them snacks because this is ISPI. And, you know, for those who have attended in person, you know, there's always great food. So we didn't have that. And I stuck these in chat. I don't know if they took, but and thank you to Nolan who sent me some of these this one's from Jim Petrozelli, one of my colleagues. Zoom fatigue is taxing the brain, and you said the bottom line is because, you know, this is not normal. But there was a remote learning guidance from the state education agencies. There were some good points in there for us generally, but if you have kids in school, this might be interesting as well. Nolan sent me that, and he also sent me the fact that Coursera is having some free certificates, and there's a lot of courses out there. So if you're in the mood of training yourself, and I think us as learning professionals being learners sometimes is really helpful. Couple great articles from CLO magazine, something about the role of the virtual classroom producer, 100,000 student classroom, that's at TED Talk that had the picture in it. And then I put the ISPI SoCal events thing here. So, and then if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I put my LinkedIn thing here, Kathleen O'Donnell, Ph.D. Yeah, that's fine, because I saw there was some in chat there if somebody wanted to get a hold of me. So that would be a good way to do it.
Terrific. Thank you, Kathleen. Really enjoyed this. I hope that our audience have enjoyed it also. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Next week, we're going to do the same thing on Tuesday at lunchtime. So prepare your lunch and prepare to join us then. Thank you for joining us. Have a great the rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Stay healthy.
Yes.
Stay healthy. Thank you.